welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us here today. Joining me, my name's Shane Mansfield. I'm the Marketing Director here at City Pantry, and I'll be facilitating a great panel discussion we've got on supporting mental health through employee well-being. Now, we've realised that with the majority of UK offices working from home for the majority of 2020, and that not looking to change anytime soon, especially not into the start of 2021, we thought there's never been a more appropriate time to address the issue and discussion about mental well-being whilst working from home, and how businesses can help that from an employee perspective. And to help us through this discussion today, we've got together a great panel of various different experts and people close to the field. So what I'm going to do is just spend a couple of minutes introducing you to those people. So we'll go through who they are, and I'll let them speak a little bit about themselves and what hopefully they'll bring to the discussion. So first of all, I'd like to welcome Charlotte Thorpe, the People Director from Just Eat. And alongside her, we also have Steve Metcalf, who joins us from Robust Mind Mental Fitness. Then we have Tilly Berry from the Yoga Agency. She's the founder of the Yoga Agency. And then finally, Jenny Crawford, who is also the People Director from City Pantry. So what I'm going to do is just quickly go around the room and ask you to quickly say a little bit about yourself. So if we could start with you first, please, Charlotte.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Charlotte Thorpe, and I've been working at Just Eat for 4 years and have many more years experience within HR and across a multiple set of industries.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. And Tilly, if I could come to you next.
Hi everyone, so my name's Tilly. I'm a London-based yoga teacher, a health and wellness enthusiast, and as Shane mentioned, founder of the Yoga Agency. And that's really why I'm here today. So our mission at the Yoga Agency is very much about improving employee well-being in the workplace. So thank you so much for having me. I'm so delighted to be here.
Thank you, Tilly. Steve, if I could come to you next, please.
Yep, Steve Metcalf, Director of Robust Mind Mental Fitness Limited. Clearly, I'm a mental health trainer and delivering training very much so with the likes of Just Eat and City Pantry. And I also teach applied suicide intervention skills training. So that's my background. That's what I bring to the party.
Thank you very much, Steve. And last but not least, Jenny, over to you, please.
Thanks, Shane. So yeah, Jenny Crawford. I'm People Director at City Pantry. Been at City Pantry for just coming up to a year. Really excited to be part of the conversation this afternoon, because I just think mental health, employee wellbeing, absolutely front and centre for so many people at the moment. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Thank you all for joining. Just for those that are watching along at the moment, please do take use of the question Q&A feature on YouTube. We will be seeing those questions come up as we go throughout the discussion, and we will allot some time towards the end to answer those questions as well. So please do feel free to submit questions. Now, with that in mind, we'll get into the panel discussion. And so the first point that I think would be good to kick off with is, why should businesses prioritise supporting their employees' mental well-being? So it's quite a broad question, but one that we can hopefully tackle to begin with. And Jenny, if I could maybe pass to you first as the last person to introduce themselves.
Great, thank you. So when I was thinking about today and what we'd cover, I did quite a bit of reading, and one of the things I came across was a survey that Harvard Business Review had done back in April. So about a month and a bit into our lockdown. And at that time, they said that around 42% of people had reported a decline in mental health. So that was even a month into lockdown. And it really made me think, what would that look like today? I don't think any of us could have imagined how long the situation would have gone on for. So I think one reason is it's clearly impactful, growing impact. The other thing I think that's really important is that employers have a moral and sort of ethical obligation as well to their people. We need to ensure that there's a safe environment for people to come to work in and to thrive in. So I think for me, they're probably two really important reasons.
Thank you, Jenny. I think that's a really salient point, and it is interesting to see how businesses are going to react to this, because there is a lot, a huge impact that we're seeing across the board on just, we say employees, but everyone's mental well-being while we're having to be locked down. Tilly, if I could come to you on that same question, from your point of view, why do you think businesses should prioritise supporting employee wellbeing?
Really good question. I think there are a lot of reasons why. In 2020, just to be a bit nerdy, 79% of people's experience work-related stress on a common basis. So that makes it the most common form of stress in the UK. So I think, just as Jenny was saying, employers have a responsibility, especially during prolonged periods like COVID, where people are more stressed than they've ever been probably in their life. And also just from a business perspective, to understand that if your employees are not prioritizing their own health and well-being, then they can't do their best at work. So it's a two-way thing, 100%.
Thank you very much, Tilly. Charlotte, what are your thoughts on that opening question?
Yeah, I think I absolutely agree. And I think for a long time, organisations almost treated employees' mental well-being and support mechanisms and initiatives as a benefit, but actually I think it should be seen as a necessity, because it's so important to be taken seriously. And there are, there's so much opportunity now and resources and initiatives that just help make mental health conversations more accessible for people, and that's what employees need in the workplace, because you do spend so much of your time in your virtual now work setting.
Thank you very much. Steve, in your experience, do you see that something that businesses are prioritising more, and what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, there's certainly been a big uptake over the last couple of years. I think Jenny already alluded to the fact that there is this moral responsibility. It's also part of their corporate responsibility. Companies want to be known when they're reaching out to other clients, not just about they're a green company, but it's also about how do you look after your staff. And of course, we also know there's a legal responsibility through health and safety. And health includes mental health, just like it does physical health. So there is that responsibility. I think employees now are really sort of tuning into the fact that their employees are their greatest asset. And Richard Branson was, quite famously known for saying his main priority is to look after your employees, because if you look after your employees, they will look after your customers. They are the people who produce the goods. They're the people that bring in the clients. They bring in the contracts. And if they're not in a good place, if they're not functioning well, then actually they're not going to be producing the goods to the best sort of rates. So absolutely key.
Thank you, Steve. Sticking with you, Steve, on the next question, maybe you can give us your thoughts on the first one. From what you've seen, do you believe that mental health has become a more openly discussed topic within businesses and organisations?
Yeah, again, I would certainly say that there's been good awareness of this now. It is very much the focus over the last few years, in particular with the young royals bringing it up. You've got some big campaigns going on. But stigma is still a big problem around mental health, just like it is with some other challenges that we have within society. But stigma is very often these prejudicial negative views that people have, and they pick up within society. And it's very often due to a lack of understanding and awareness about a subject. And then because of that, they very often then will behave differently towards people. And that discrimination is a real challenge. And again, even just the inappropriate use of language in the workplace. Some people say, it's just a bit of banter, it's just a bit of a laugh. For someone who's already struggling with their mental health, to hear people using inappropriate terms, such as mad, weird, nutter, head case, lunatic, that really does cause distress. It makes it really difficult then for those individuals to reach out and get the help and support that's available within the company, sometimes through HR, sometimes through EAP processes. It also means that they don't reach out and therefore get that help. They start their recovery. And in many cases, it will actually make them feel worse about themselves. And of course, there's also the other context of this. For some people, they, again, because of either assumptions or perhaps because of previous experience, they're really worried and concerned that if they was to openly talk about mental health problems, in particular when we've got situations like we have now within society, companies downsizing, restructuring, perhaps 3 people will go for 2 jobs, and surprise, surprise, the person that's disclosed some kind of mental illness is the one who doesn't get it. So again, it's about understanding, it's about education, it's about awareness, and then it's about people having that just honesty to be able to openly talk about the subject without the fear there's going to be negative consequences. So again, it's about, you know, it's got to be led from the top as well as, you know, top down. It's got to be bottom pushing up as well. So we need to collectively work on it, mate. But yeah.
Thank you, Steve. That's really, really interesting to hear it from that point of view, because I think you're right, is that there's maybe there's a point where it's openly discussed, but not honestly discussed. And maybe that's the difference. And maybe if I could come to you, Jenny, what are your thoughts on that you know, that difference between maybe openly discussing it and honestly discussing it at businesses?
Yeah, I think that is a concern. So I think there are some organisations out there, for example, that might say, oh, we've done our mental health first aider training, we've ticked that box, and that's it. And of course, there's so much more to it than that, because you need to ensure that culturally, you know, your organisation is absolutely encouraging those conversations, that it's a safe space, that it's okay to talk about mental health in the workplace. That you've got the right support and training to sit underneath that, you know, ensuring that your line managers can react supportively to somebody that maybe does raise an issue. And also, I think, recognising that employees are not this sort of homogenous group. You know, I think if COVID has taught us anything, where we've seen, you know, other family members in the background, you know, an assortment of dogs and cats joining in Zoom calls from time to time, we've all got our own unique context. We've all got our own mental health, and I think, you know, not just seeing employees as a group, but recognising that individual context is also really important. And I think that the work that, you know, mental health charities do, that training companies like Steve's do, is really helping to drive that cultural change piece as well.
Thank you, Jenny. Charlotte, what are your thoughts on that sort of discussion between openly discussed and honestly discussed?
Yeah, I fully agree. I think as a nation, we're definitely more aware than ever than the need for more proactive health and well-being in the workplace. But I do think, particularly for the managers who are having to have those one-to-one direct conversations with their employees about, you know, mental health conditions, that's a really hard job. And sometimes it can be overlooked on the support that the managers need to have those conversations and to create that safe space for employees. And I remember being in a session of Steve's where, you know, you can open up that dialogue, but you're not the professional in that situation. You need to guide them to that professional service. And it's a really tricky conversation to navigate. And I think managers need the support to do that from their organisations, to have that.
Thank you very much. And then Tilly, from your point of view as a supplier to businesses, as a wellness supplier, like, have you come across it being more openly talked about in from your perspective?
Yeah, 100%. I think people are much more open to talking about this now. And I think as well, it's worth mentioning that I've obviously noticed a lot on social media, people are opening up, people are posting about things, and also on LinkedIn. And I've noticed recently older generations who have maybe been brought up in a society that has historically stigmatized mental health issues, they are breaking down those barriers now, and they are talking about these issues in the workplace. And I think it's a lot more genuine than it has been previously, which is really exciting and positive to see. And I think I'm seeing that as well at the yoga agency. We're getting a lot more inquiries for ways to boost positivity and employee morale, and get people talking about how they're feeling. I think just on like a very physiological level right now, going into the second lockdown has felt harder than the first lockdown. Just purely from like a scientific perspective, we don't have the energy that we sort of were in fight or flight mode, survival mode, and now we're in a prolonged crisis, and the stress is still here, but the energy levels are here. So just very physiologically speaking, we are depleted, and employers need to be like, you know, really helping people restore, re-energize, providing safe spaces for them to talk through things. So yeah, it's happening. And I'm very positive about it. There's obviously a long way to go.
Thank you, Tilly. And that dovetails quite nicely into the next topic or the next question, which is what's some of the mental health impact we've already started seeing as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and prolonged working from home. So, I mean, you mentioned, the impact in terms of where our energy levels are versus the prolonged crisis. So maybe if I could start with you this time, Charlotte, what do you think? Have you started seeing any things from a Just Eat side of point of view in terms of the mental health impact we've seen from COVID-19 so far?
I've definitely seen one trait, and I hate to say I'm guilty of it myself, in kind of this virtual presenteeism, having the longer hours at your desk, because your desk is there, it's at home, and you replace your commuting time with being at your desk from 8:30 through to 6 p.m. at night. And that's, it's not healthy, and it's definitely having an impact, because I think there's sometimes I get to Thursday and I think, my God, I haven't even been outside this week. You have to remind yourself to get back into the routine of looking after your physical and mental state, so that you can just stay productive, and keep the energy levels up. But it's definitely something that I've noticed, a trend that's happening.
Thank you. And Steve, from your perspective, from the outside in looking and helping businesses, have you seen any impact yet from COVID-19 in your work? Yeah,
absolutely. I think the biggest driver is clearly that the additional challenges that COVID-19 has brought with stress levels. The 5 big groups of stress: the physical, how it affects us physically, clearly for those people who pick up the virus. Some are asymptomatic, others more challenging. Clearly some actually needing proper medical attention, and tragically, it can be fatal. So there's those additional physical stresses. Environmental stresses increased. For a lot of people, there's now that working from home, which is a new process. For others, it may be they previously worked from home, but all of a sudden they've got children around them more. They've got the other members of the family there. So that change. And humans, we like routine, we like structure. When there's change, that causes additional stress. Emotional stress has certainly increased, in particular with people's ability to socially interact, get the support from friends, family, colleagues. And of course, as lockdowns keep happening, that is being challenged. Some people have been affected by the loss of friends, family members through bereavements, and they've not been able to go through that proper grieving process, the closure, because the restrictions on funeral processes. In addition, the other positive, they've not been able to attend weddings. So again, all of these things build those extra pressures. Acute stress is increased. Very often with acute stress, something comes on really quickly. And of course, for those people that all of a sudden find they've now got and picked up the virus, huge pressures and stresses, or in particular, if it's a loved one, a family member or colleague who they now can't support. And then the chronic stresses increase, as I think it was Tilly started to allude to, the longer this goes on and the uncertainty, and we have to acknowledge, we are in a situation which is rapidly changing and it is consistently changing. So we need to work with it, but there will be these periods of restrictions on movement, social interaction, not being able to work and interact as normal. And again, now there'll be the tier processes, and then again, another lockdown. There's uncertainty about Christmas period. So all of these things build those additional stresses, and stress is that perceived threat that we all pick up on within society, which drives anxiety. And that's why people are having increased levels of anxiety disorders, and for some experiencing levels of depression. So absolutely, there's been a big pressure, sort of vacuum just waiting to go.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. Jenny, is there anything that you've seen in particular, any traits beyond what's already been talked about that maybe you've seen from the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact?
I mean, I think very similar to those already mentioned by the panel, but maybe I could talk just very briefly about some of the things that we've done at City Pantry to try and alleviate some of those issues that have arisen. So absolutely agree, this real sort of blurring between personal life and work life. And actually in the background while you're talking, I just heard my children come in from school, so we might have a bit more of a blurring in a minute. But I think we've really tried to encourage our people to find routines, but not not sort of apply a blanket routine, but encourage them to find routines that work for them personally, and see if that would, you know, help make that easier. I also agree with Steve and Tilly that the sort of mental tiredness piece, you know, I don't think any of us could have anticipated that actually at the start of lockdown. I think we just thought, you know, working from home, how much easier that will be without the commute. And of course it's different. So again, some things that we've tried at City Pantry are, you know, if you've got a 30-minute meeting in the diary, we'll make it 25 minutes and build in some break time, some breathing time. If you've got an hour's meeting, then make it 50 minutes. Again, just build in some time so you've got a bit of time to get up, move around, have a change of scene. So things like that, and also just particularly during the first lockdown, I think, you know, where people had lots of childcare issues, and just not underestimating that impact and making it easy for people to manage their time, to trust them to manage their time as best they can.
Thank you, Jenny. And I, you know, myself, I've seen the benefits of being given the freedom to do that. But obviously, it's yeah, you do underestimate that when everywhere is your workspace. My children become my work colleagues, and they're not as nice as my other work colleagues. They definitely don't take into account my work day. Anyway, what I was going to say, we're going to go on to one more question and go through that, and then we're going to stop some of the questions that have been coming in. That will take us to about halfway, and then we'll get back into the topics we've discussed. So on that, and from working from home, some of the next question we were going to tackle is some people love working from home, and others have found it much harder. What can individuals and organizations do to ensure they're providing an environment where people feel productive and supported? And Jenny, you've just sort of spoken on a few bits and pieces there, so this time I'm going to go to Charlotte first, if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would really just emphasize Jenny's point in that I think it's crucial to recognize that everyone's circumstances are different, and you've just got to be empathetic and make allowances just to help take some of the pressure off people. You know, it is, and none of these circumstances are going to go away overnight, and you've just got to take the time for people to adapt, be supportive, and then help them through that. And I think one of the key tips is to not just check in once, but check in regularly and frequently, just to check in on how people are doing.
And Tilly, from your perspective, again, coming in, what have you seen in terms of the differences between people working from home and maybe engaging with you in a pre-COVID world? How's working from home seen your sort of clientele engage with you, and how's that changed?
I think we're seeing a lot more interest in the wellbeing classes that we have on offer. For example, ergonomic workshops, because people aren't set up to work from home and people are concerned about their physical health, and we know that physical health and mental health are very interlinked, and really all our classes have at the core mental health. They address that topic because that is everything. Everything starts with the mind and the brain. So I think in terms of what organizations can be doing to make it more supportive for their people, I would go back to Charlotte's earlier point when she was talking about the leaders in the company. So I think it's really important that your leaders have some support, because they're not just supporting themselves and their family, but also their team. And so just the quality of questions that they're asking is so important. And the quality of questions that we're all asking ourselves every day in COVID is so important. And the reality is most of us don't have a coach by our side helping us to ask those right questions. So giving your leaders some external support, like coaching, one-to-one coaching, which we offer at the Yoga Agency, or leadership coaching webinars, is really good. Secondly, I think picking up on Jenny's earlier point about setting boundaries, people are really struggling to set boundaries at the moment in working from home. So as a company, there are lots of things you can do that are really simple things that can take some of the pressure away from the individual to set those boundaries. So as an example, my sister's company enforce an hour every lunchtime that's just blocked out of their diary. No one can schedule meetings with them, no one can send them emails, you can't have calls. It's so they can have a proper lunch break. And something else is dedicating an hour a week to wellness. So even if you don't have the financial resources to get a wellness talk or mindfulness coaching or meditation, then communicate to your staff that you recognize that their health and well-being needs to be a priority at this time, for both the business's sake and for their sake. So I think that's a really, really good place to start, is just having that hour during a work day. So it's within their working day, dedicated to wellness and me.
Thank you, Tilly. Thank you for that.
You know where to stop. There are so many things.
Steve, from your point of view, what do you think businesses can do to kind of support this working from home environment we find ourselves in?
I think a couple of people have already sort of touched on quite a few of the things already. But again, for a lot of people, this is a new process and they don't know how to work from home. So even just trying to encourage people to try and keep some sense of what is the normal of their routine. So, you know, get up as you would normal time, get yourself washed, showered, you know, have a breakfast. If you normally commute to work, then you might want to use that sort of 20, 30 minutes, whatever it happens to be, probably more in many cases, you know, perhaps go out and do a brisk walk, get a little bit of fresh air, so a little bit of exercise just to help start you. I always, again, try and encourage people to wear the normal clothes that they would wear to work when they're working from home, rather than sitting in the pajamas or dressing gowns. It just puts you in the right mindset. Again, touched on by Tilly there, but taking regular breaks. And if you would normally, you know, have your lunch hour, dinner break, etc., and you perhaps catch up with a few friends over that, well, perhaps just try and do that through a Zoom call. So again, you can still have that communication, and it's very much about self-discipline as well. Again, I think Jenny mentioned this one earlier on, you know, keep to your working hours. It's too easy to sit at the computer all day. And again, for many people, if you finish work at 5 o'clock, then that's when you should be finishing. And again, we also need to acknowledge people sitting in front of IT equipment, it strains the eyes. So you might need to have more regular breaks than you perhaps would do doing a different role. I think also managers, again, has been touched on, they clearly need support as well. But checking in is completely different to checking up on people. So you're trying to find out about the person. How are they coping? Are they having issues and challenges? If you want to check in on work, then try and do that at a separate meeting, a separate call. And if possible, make those calls either a phone call, but better still, a video call. Much better than just receiving a text or an email. How are you getting on? Or, right, I want you to do this week. Again, so you can perhaps, because some people's work role has changed, if it has, you might need to set up a slightly amended job description. They might be working to a new management system now. It could also be that they need perhaps a little bit more guidance with the prioritization of work, because very often if people have no prioritization given to them, they'll try and do everything all at once. And again, that just causes additional stresses. And for the individuals, you know, please try and keep those boundaries about what is work, what is not. For managers, please do not send emails and texts expecting a response out of normal working hours. Yeah, you need your rest time, you need your quality of life, so does your staff. And if you want to get the best out of them, allow them to have their own quality of work. There will be some people, clearly, because of either their work role or because of priorities going on in the company, that will need to be accessible during the evenings and perhaps over weekends. But again, discipline yourself. Do I really need to know the answer to this question right now, or can it wait until the morning? If it can, then please do, because you want the best out of them, so let them recharge their batteries. And for the individuals, again, you know, if you normally have you know, a bit of a meeting, say a monthly meeting as a group within your floor plate, or perhaps within your part of the department, then continue to have those, but just do it over a Zoom call. So again, people still have some correspondence, they still have some connection. And very much so for the individual, you know, if you need help, reach out. Get it. You've got some great HRs, in particular in City Pantry and Just Eat. You've got the EAP support, and for those who are not aware, the Employees Assistance Provision. You know, get familiar with it. Get it out to your staff so they know the kind of help. And of course, there's the other supports as well, through the NHS and clearly through the national support organisations. So you know, there's a lot of work there that perhaps can be passed out to people, you know, as a real positive for them. And just knowing as an employee that you are being supported, even though the situation has changed, again, is a huge benefit to us.
Thank you, Steve. I think that's really important, and one of the points you touched upon there that I think is quite interesting is that, you know, out of hours and messaging, and that there's a lot of productivity tools, as they like to be called, like the likes of Slack, which most people are on, that never stop. You know, they're on 24 hours a day, and there is a compulsion to feel the need to answer a Slack should it come in, you know, at 7, 8 o'clock in the evening, and maybe that's something that, you know, as a working culture we need to address with those productivity tools. Jenny, I know you started us off with some of the bits that City Pantry has done in regard to some of these bits and pieces, but I just wanted to come back to you and make sure that if you didn't have anything else to add to that point on what individuals and organisations can do.
I mean, I would just echo the points on communication. I think that's fundamental. I suppose two other things I would add. I think just in terms more broadly in terms of engagement of people when you're working remotely, and how that relates to mental health and well-being, and how employees see the company and feel about the company, and the information they absorb about the company is also more challenging. So I think another thing organisations can do is think about the voices that people are hearing. So who are they hearing from at an all hands, for example? Is it always the same core of people that speaks? Because I think the sort of absence of those sort of water cooler chats, or, you know, chats around the coffee machine, actually limits how people glean information about the organisation, and therefore how they fit within it. I also think it's really important to keep celebrating successes. So keep letting employees know, you know, if they're doing a great job, keep telling them they're doing a great job, and how you do that might change. But I think that becomes even more important. And then Shane, just going back to what you were saying there about Slack, I completely agree. I think we're all guilty of using it kind of too much, and you know, there is no end date or end time for Slack messages. But one of the things that I think's worked really effectively with Slack at City Pantry is using it for more of a support network. So, for example, we've got a channel that is for working parents, where, frankly, certainly in the first lockdown, it was used as much to sort of vent and share frustration and give support as anything else. But it was great for people to know that they weren't alone, that there were other people in the company feeling the same way. So I do think there can be some good use of Slack in there as well to help with that comms piece.
Thank you, Jenny. So we're gonna break from our standard panel discussion now, just to address some of the questions that have come in. Some are directed at particulars, so particular people. So I will pull those ones up. So the first one is from Madeline, and this is to Jenny and Charlotte. And it's: some mental health support practices for employees at work can be quite expensive, like having a gym, free healthy snacks, break rooms, etc. What do you suggest for companies that can't necessarily afford that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to kick off, Jenny. I don't know if you've had a look at the mentalhealthatwork.org.uk. They have some amazing free resources on there, and I think it speaks volumes when you proactively, as a leader or, you know, HR office manager, share out some of the resources just around mental health and well-being and looking after yourself, and some of the blogs that are available on LinkedIn, likewise, you know, equally great in terms of sharing around resources amongst the team, or to those people that really need it. Would you add anything, Jenny?
No, I think that's really good advice. I mean, I think the other piece is around mental health first aiders. I don't think that training is hugely expensive. I think that can add real value in terms of encouraging the dialogue, encouraging or giving employees somewhere to go to get further advice. So even if that advice or that solution is not provided directly by the company, knowing where to go to get that extra help, I think is probably a really key one as well.
Thank you both. Then one of the other ones, so from Charlotte D, and this one's to you, Steve. How can employees support colleagues during a bereavement, particularly during this time? What ways can businesses do that?
I think clearly there would be good support to start with, good two-way communication, understanding, you know, we all get affected by bereavements differently, and we have to be very careful that we don't presume that someone is responding to a bereavement just like we would. And because, you know, for some people, the loss of a pet can be more challenging than the loss of a human. And again, for some people, they have a very close relationship with colleagues, better perhaps than they have with family members. So clearly, it's about trying to just be empathetic, understand from the other person's perspective what the challenges are, how it is affecting them, and what kind of support. Always a great question. What kind of help do you think you want, you know, or would help you? Because in many cases, people might have their own ideas, but they just don't know how to go about it. You've got some great organisations like Cruise, a very good bereavement society, and again, very good at helping people connect up with perhaps other people that have experienced bereavements, in particular when it's gone on for sort of at least 4 to 6 weeks, and because there's that natural grieving process. Again, my background is military, and in the military, if someone had a bereavement, they would be entitled to some compassionate leave. So again, perhaps some people just need some time. They might need some reduction in their responsibilities in the workplace. It could be perhaps some of their work is taken off and passed to other people. So very much it's about trying to find out from the person the kind of help. And of course, there is, for those that have access to an EAP, there will be some great support provided through your EAP providers, much of which can be over the phone, it can be computer based, and some people may again need some face-to-face sessions. But also it's about letting people know the kind of support your GP can provide you. Because of course, if grief and bereavements aren't dealt with, they can manifest into other challenges, in particular things like depression. And we also, I think, just have to acknowledge, while we can't fix everything, and nor should we try to, you know, some people might need some additional support with funding, for etc. And again, I don't know what different companies have available to them. Some are very good, and some clearly don't have the resources. But again, it may be that guidance towards the likes of the Citizens Advice Bureau, where there is additional support, etc. These can be really beneficial. Tilly mentioned earlier on about stress reduction. Sometimes just being able to release your stresses in different ways, and that 1 hour a week is something that is always encouraged for people to do, and just some knowledge on those different kind of techniques which can help. So again, it's about sharing their story, absolutely, and making the person feel that they are being listened to. Absolutely key.
Thank you, Steve. We've got an open question now, so I'm going to come to you on this one, Tilly. So this is from Raj, and it's the question itself is how do you go about encouraging senior leaders to build a culture that prioritizes and promotes wellness above everything else? And the reason I was coming to you first on this one, Tilly, is from an outside point of view. Do you see senior leaders coming to you as a provider of wellness to try and build that culture?
I would say more recently, slightly more. However, predominantly it will be office managers or HR managers like Charlotte and Jenny, rather than maybe the CEO of the company. Obviously, smaller companies, it might be the CEO coming to us to organise wellness on behalf of their employees. But I think going back to the start when Steve was talking about the stigmatization of mental health, and for people that maybe are more senior in companies, especially if they're of that older generation, where asking for help or talking about mental health was stigmatized and it was seen as a failure. I even asked my parents that and they were like, yeah, it is. So I think that is starting to change now. Could you remind me of the question again?
So it was about whether you're seeing senior leaders, you know, coming to you as a provider of wellness to maybe make that change for a cultural point of view within a business. And by the sounds of it, it seems like it's still very much the remit of the office manager or a HR professional. Is that fair? Yeah,
I would say so. Yeah, except in smaller companies, if they don't have an office manager or HR department, then yeah, it will be. It's a mix, I would say, but leaning towards that. Okay. So then on that point, I suppose coming to yourself, maybe Jenny, how can, as a HR professional, how can we as businesses look to encourage those senior leaders to actually build that culture of wellness and well-being?
I mean, I think one of the ways to do that, if they don't get it, if they don't see that it's the right thing to do, as we talked about at the outset, is actually to talk about the cost of absence to the business. And I'm sure Steve has got some stats on costs to the UK. But I mean, even just, you know, the number of cases of depression, for example, have doubled through lockdown, and, you know, correspondingly, the impact on people's performance, whether or not they're in the business, is huge, I'm sure. So I think being able to go to senior managers with some pound signs that might put a sort of slightly different perspective on it, because, you know, at the end of the day, if you've got an engaged, motivated group of employees, then they are going to do the right thing for the business, and your productivity and everything else is going to flow from there. If you don't have that, then you're not going to be maximising the opportunities available to you as a business leader. So that's where I would come at it from. But Steve, I don't know if you've got any useful stats to hand. I haven't, in terms of the costs, but maybe you have.
Yeah, well, when we just look at it normally, the cost of mental ill health in the workplace in lost productivity is assessed at about 55 billion, 55 billion pound a year to the NHS and all of its additional challenges as well. Plus then, of course, there's loss in direct productivity. When you add it all up, it's about 105 billion pound a year. Now, I think one of the great ways of buy-in, and you've started to allude to it already, Jenny, is very much about getting someone from at least HR on the board. That is absolutely key, so that kind of information, you know, this is the challenges we're having. These are the effects of the workload, the stress, people absence, possibly also talking about presenteeism, where people are at work but they just ain't functioning properly. And then actually, not everyone, as you said earlier on, needs to be a mental health first aider. And what I've done recently, again, with both your company and also with Just Eat, and I'm working with Moore Kingston Smith, is I've literally running short awareness presentations. And then actually, you know, managers, senior directors, they can't afford to be away for 4 hours, 8 hours doing a mental health course. But a short, sharp 1.5 hours, this is what the issues are. These are the challenges. This is how it can be addressed. This is how you can pick it up in the workplace, are really beneficial then, you know, for people to see this is the cost. And actually it's a spend to save measure. And again, I think you've hit that nail on the head. You know, if they start to see that poor mental health amongst their employees is costing money, then actually it's a natural thing to fix. But of course, in a lot of cases, it's about actually the way that that's put across. So yeah, absolutely get it.
Thank you, Steve. Before we move on back to the main kind of discussion points we had, did anyone else want to speak up on that particular question?
I would just add that something that we've done in Just Eat as well to help, you know, engage senior leaders is do some pulse surveys, and you can, you know, there's some free survey tools out there that you can use just to ask some very short, quick fire questions on how people are feeling right now, and have they got what they need at home to do their job effectively, and what more support could they need. And that's a real great way to get some anonymous feedback, you know, comments as to what more the organisation can do and what people need.
So that's a very good point, and it does bring me on to one of the discussion points we have, and that's that small changes can have a really big impact for individuals. What are some of the simple initiatives that can be implemented to help support mental health for businesses? Then they could be, you know, as you said, as simple as pulse checks to try and get engagement up. But maybe if I can come to you first, Tilly, on this one as well. What do you think businesses can do, you know, small changes that can be made that might impact and help?
I think a lot of them have already been touched on. So like creating time in the week for people to focus on their own health and well-being, getting in touch with external sources, professionals like Steve, who are able to talk about meditation, organizing wellness classes through companies like the Yoga Agency, just communicating to your employees that you are supporting them and changing the culture internally. So encouraging a space that is open and communicative. We've found out from our clients that what's really popular at the moment is our wellness talks, because they create this really safe space where people are connecting. They're not talking about work, they're just having a conversation with each other. They're talking about really random things. They're being prompted, they're being asked certain questions to make them think about certain things, not work related. And it's just really helping improve positivity and create a healthier mindset towards COVID. So I think there are a lot of things you can do on a company level. There are also things you can do as an individual. So looking for inspiration in your life is really important. Like having fun is really important. Having fun is one of the most natural and efficient ways you can de-stress your entire being. So really lean into what brings you joy right now, because that's how we can support ourselves. We know we're depleted, we know energy levels are lower. And then once you do feel your energy levels coming back up, then share it. So become the source of inspiration. So that could be starting a wellbeing newsletter within your company, just dropping in a few of your favorite podcasts that inspired and motivated you, or maybe like a fun recipe you tried that week. Just sort of move into that space of sharing inspiration as well.
Thank you very much. Jenny, from your point of view, aside from say Slack or support Slack channels, for example, are there any other small changes that maybe you could suggest that would have those big impacts?
I think one of the things we've found that's helped is actually reminding people of what there is out there available to them. So I think, you know, for companies that are fortunate and do have some mental health support in place, just reminding your employees what that looks like, what it can do for them, where they can find out more information, and putting that into different forms so it's really accessible for people, I think is important. And if you don't have that, I think there's just so much out there at the moment. As Charlotte was saying, there's free resources that maybe, you know, you could bring some of that into your company and just start sharing and start a dialogue, start a conversation. So again, it doesn't have to cost money.
Thank you. And Steve, from your point of view, is there any? I mean, we've covered a lot at the moment, so if there aren't any, that's fine. But any other small changes that you might want to add?
Yeah, I mean, training. Education is clearly going to be there, and as we say, short awareness training is really great and cost effective. But there's something that, you know, all companies can download. It might sound boring. Go onto the Health and Safety Executive website and download the management standards. All right, the management standards. That is a great way for companies then to look at the causes of work-related stress and how to deal with it. Right, really, really fundamental, basic things, which actually can make everyone's life in a better way, whether you're working face-to-face in offices or actually you're working from home. And again, it's about bringing these in. And I know it was, I did a talk a while back, and there was a councillor from Islington Council who said that they brought this in, and it massively, over a period of 12 months, reduced the amount of work-related stress issues they had. So again, it's a free resource. Just go and have a look at it. And then again, it's got to be driven probably from the HR up, getting it in to the board, getting them to buy in and seeing the benefits. It's all free.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. We've got time to take one more question that's come in over the Q&A, so we'll address that, and then we'll see whether we've got time for one more of the main panel questions after that. So this one again from Charlotte D. Charlotte mentioned that companies previously considered mental health as a work benefit. These work perks tend to be associated with startups or younger companies only. How do you think more traditional corporate companies can incorporate these initiatives into their businesses? And Charlotte, why don't we start with you on that one?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of ways that I think the corporates can incorporate some of the initiatives, and there's some amazing companies out there. And I'll speak to one of them that we actually use, and it's Sanctus Mental Health Coaching. And they provide a fantastic service for employees to have access to, you know, a trained professional to talk around their mental health, and it's a one-to-one coaching session that is now done virtually as well, and it's a safe space, confidential, and that's just one of the initiatives. You know, not to mention EAP programs that Steve talked about. We've also done some physical wellbeing sessions by inviting HIIT classes into the workplace over the lunch break or in the morning, and I think just using some of the amazing suppliers that are out there to provide a large and at scale provision to employees that they can then choose to take advantage if they want to.
Thank you, Charlotte. Tilly, from your perspective, what do you think? What do you think the more traditional corporates can do to incorporate these initiatives?
I think it's that firstly, it's understanding the numbers. So even if you are a more traditional corporate firm, eventually you are going to have to employ some younger people. And if you look at the numbers, so the Mental Health Foundation released a report back in June showing that young people, so in between the ages of 18 and 24, are double as likely to have suicidal thoughts than the rest of the population as a whole. They are more in tune with their own mental health, and it does need to be spoken about. It's not really an option. So I think understanding the motivation to do it is really important. And then from there, like creating an employee wellness program that is really relevant to your company. So you have to delve deep and look at what is inherent in your company that could be detrimentally impacting employees' mental health. And then from there, you can create solutions, like look at your demographic, create surveys, look at where you're falling short, and then create solutions from there.
Thank you, Tilly. And Jenny, same question. Any additional points to that?
I think Charlotte and Tilly have summed it up really well. Actually, I don't think I've really got anything to add other than I think just building on Tilly's last point slightly. I think it's also about tailoring it to the culture of the company. So whatever solutions you put in place, it's got to work for that environment. But I agree with both Charlotte and Tilly. Some great points.
Thank you. And finally, Steve, I know like we talked about it briefly the other day. Obviously businesses can develop strategies and policies to make mental health a priority. What would be your advice on pushing that together as a business?
I think firstly, as we've sort of alluded to in different ways, there are some companies that are already doing this and they're doing it really well. So please, contact other companies, find out what they do, but don't just try and go off at it as a best guess, because quite often, you're going to head down the wrong tangent, or you'll fix one problem, but you haven't realised the bigger issues are actually lying under the surface somewhere. So I would certainly try and encourage people to speak to consultants like myself, get some good guidance, put in some structured approach. Look at what is, perhaps the gold plate scenario, the silver, the bronze, work out what is within the realization of costs, also with manpower requirements. And also, please wake up to the fact that there was an early day motion went through Parliament during the last session to bring parity between mental health first aid and physical health first aid in the workplace. Clearly with the change of government and then with the pandemic, that's been pushed slightly to the right. But it had cross-party support. It is going to go through. It will then become a legal requirement. There are companies, clearly we have two on here today, who are well ahead of the curve. They're forward thinking. And what you don't want to be working for is a company that will only do it when it becomes a lawful requirement. And again, it's all about looking after your staff. Are you a positive leading company with people that you want to inspire, or are you only doing the bare minimum? So again, it's about people taking up that duty care, that moral obligation to make sure that they are leading and looking after their personnel.
Thank you very much for that, Steve. At this point, we will draw to a close. So I'd like to thank everyone that's been on the panel for spending their time with us today and feeding into the discussion. I hope everyone that's watching along has found it useful, interesting and insightful. We will, of course, be sharing this afterwards on our usual social media channels, so you can get the recording. And if there are any questions or follow-ups, you can contact City Pantry there, and we will, of course, put you in touch with the necessary professionals and links and resources that we've discussed today. So thank you everyone for joining, and have a lovely afternoon. Goodbye.